All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Chad Jeffers. Chad, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me. It's an
Oh,
honor to be with you.
I'll tell you, I have been looking forward to this conversation, and that is the weirdest thing ever. My video just shut off. I've never had that
Was it
happen.
something I said?
I
Something
don't
I did?
know. That was the dangest thing I've never. That was the first time I've ever experienced that. Zoom's just doing its thing there. But I have been looking forward to this conversation. And I want to start off by giving a shout out to Juliana Starchersky because she was the one that introduced you and I. And without her, we may have never even met.
I know.
And,
I know.
and
She's awesome. She's a great
oh
person.
man. And and what is so cool about getting introduced like that by somebody that you and I both have just this mutual with that love and admiration and respect for is that when you and I spoke for the first time, it was like we'd known each other for years already.
That's right.
And
So true.
and what a testament right there to the power of relationships, which of course is what this podcast is all about and stuff. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
yeah, Juliana, thank you so much. And what I want to do, Chad, to start with, is I want to turn it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context and let the listeners know a little bit about who you are and what you're all about. So I want you to be able to talk about and share, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you get to do and the impact you're making, and also share some of the backstory too, because I'm really excited to have you share that because that's how we really make meaningful connection with each other just by sharing our stories. And you got a heck of a story.
Well, thank you. Well, I am Chad Jeffers. I'm a Scorpio, and my favorite colors is orange. So, no, we won't go that deep. Don't worry. No, I am a musician, an artist musician, and for the past 18 years, I've been out with Carrie Underwood, playing guitar for her. Previous to that, I was out with Kenny Loggins. Previous to that was Keith Urban. And early in the 2000s, I had my own band. We were signed to RCA, and there's a band called Pin Monkey.
Okay.
Funny name for a country band, but it was we lasted for a little bit there on a major label, which it was a great experience. I would not have changed it for the world. Because it did set me up for many other things to come in my music career. But I've been in music for doing this professionally for about 30 years,
Okay.
and it's been just a heck of a ride. And it started when I was, I mean, as early as I can remember, 3 or 4 years old. Um, and then we had a family band starting. My dad was a singer songwriter. And so I was trying to emulate everything that he was doing, I was wanting to do,
Mhm.
and started out on drums and went to piano. And then our guitar player dropped out. So I thought, well, how hard can it be? So I just picked up a guitar, started playing guitar, and just learning different instruments. And I didn't realize like how different that was until I moved to Nashville, and people were like, "Wow, you can play a lot of different instruments," which has bode well for me in my career because every gig I've taken, it seems like I pick up a new instrument with that artist. So
Wow.
anyway, it's been an interesting journey with that.
Yeah. Very
And
cool.
then also living here in Nashville, I'm also a luxury real estate agent with Compass Real Estate, and
Okay.
I've been doing that for about 5 years. And I cater to people within the music industry, entertainment industry, and so it's been really nice to work in the sports and entertainment division of Compass and to work with people that are in the business that I've been in for so long.
Yeah. Well, when we spoke before, you were telling me about this course you're creating too and stuff. And I want you to talk a little bit about that because I was really inspired when you were telling me not only about it, but about why you're putting it together. And so talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, well, in music, with especially being with, artists like Carrie Underwood and Keith Urban, our office is walking out on stage in front of 12,000, 15, 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And the question that I've always gotten through the years is how are you able to walk out on stage and be the best version of yourself and be so comfortable?
Yeah.
You're literally just walking out in front of 15,000 people, which of course we all know that speaking in public is one of the highest fears that people
Biggest
have,
fears
right up
people
there
have,
with
yeah.
death and everything else. And walking out on stage in front of 15,000 people, being the best version of yourself, people were asking me like, how do you do that? And at the time, I'm just like, well, I just do it. You put on a guitar and you just go and do your job. And when I got into real estate, I was meeting with some of my early on clients, showing properties. And before I met with them, I started getting like, sweaty palms and kind of cold hands and kind of the butterflies in my stomach. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? This is really strange. So I started treating meeting with clients the same way as I did before I went on stage. Keeping in mind, I didn't realize that I did all this stuff before I went on stage because I'd been doing it for so long and it was just subconscious and it's just part of my workflow.
Yep.
So I started applying all of that to my real estate. And then that's when, showing up in front of my clients, the best version of myself, the same way that I do in front of 15,000 people. But it all started clicking with me and making sense. And I thought, I wonder if other people, feel like this. And that's when I was actually talking with Juliana, the lady that introduced you and I, and she goes, "Oh, there's something here with this. This is really, really good because." And when we started walking through some of the steps that I do prior to stage, and I started applying, like, for instance, like put on your show clothes. And I told her, I'm like, yeah, well, before we go out on stage, we put on show clothes. She goes, so it's not street clothes, or I'm like, no, show clothes. And, they're tailored to us. We have a wardrobe person that tours with Carrie. And so all of our clothes are tailored to us. They're made for stage, and when you put those clothes on, when you put on show clothes, you feel different. There's a psychological thing that happens. You're like, it's time to go to work. We're about to go perform here, and you're ready. Your body physically is like, all right, and mentally you're like, let's do this. So whenever I started applying that to real estate, and I have a certain suit that I wear, or I have certain clothes. And by the way, this doesn't have to be any kind of fancy clothes. It's just clothes that fit you really well, that fit you really well. So when you put it on, it's almost like, hey, these clothes have already been approved. You already know that you look the best you're going to look. And so whenever I started putting that suit on that was tailor made before meeting with clients, like I instantly am like, it's showtime. It's time to meet with my clients and let's go. And so that's where the whole Be Performance Ready movement came from, was those kind of conversations that I was having, and with Juliana, and then also with some other realtors, and they were all like, "This is amazing!" Their head was exploding. They're like, like they never thought about their clothes as like show clothes in terms of the real estate aspect of meeting with a client.
Totally.
And so that's where all of that was coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see, that, you're right that we, especially with entrepreneurs, they have lots of moments where they want to show up in the best way possible because they're going to get the best results when that happens and stuff. And when they don't have all that chatter going on in the back of their minds, of whatever's coming up, that they just get to show up and be them and just know that, like, man, we got this. We totally got this. And just showing, like you said, as this best version of themselves,
Yeah, absolutely. And as entrepreneurs, we have so many thoughts going through our minds, especially whenever we're meeting with people and we're thinking about so many things. And the one thing is that if you know that you look good, well, that's one thing that you don't have to worry about. If you look
Yeah.
at, Steve Jobs, he was notorious for his outfit, just
Yeah.
the mock turtleneck and jeans, and Zuckerberg and all those guys, they have certain things that they do where so they're not even thinking about, that's already off the table for them.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so awesome. Okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set here, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, Chad, have you ever been introduced? Have you ever been met or been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yes, and whenever you ask that question, I mean, the first two people that come to mind, well, it would be my dad, which
Okay.
obviously I met him a long time ago,
A long time
a
ago.
long time ago. But then the other person would be the late Dan Miller,
Okay.
and so who was a best-selling author that lived here in Middle Tennessee, and he definitely it was really interesting because much of what he and our discussions were also very similar to the discussions that my dad would have with me, my late father
Okay.
that would have with me. And growing up, once again, my dad was a singer songwriter, and so we had a family band that he helped nurture us with along with my brother and one of our neighborhood friends, which by the way, all three of us become professional musicians.
Wow.
And our friend that was in our neighborhood, he went on to be a producer and toured with Beck and with Pink and was on the Shrek albums and did the Expedia.com. Well, he wrote that and recorded that.
Okay.
That was him. So,
Okay.
I mean, highly successful. And I mean, so starting with my dad, I mean, he gave us he gave us advice that my friends' dads were not giving them.
Okay.
My friends' dads were saying, "Hey, you need to get a job. You need to go to college. You need to get a good job with a company, and you'll stay with that company for the rest of your life." My dad told us, he said, "Don't ever get a job with benefits if you want to do music, because if you get a
Ah.
job with benefits, your music is going to go by the wayside because you're going to get too comfortable, and you're not going to pursue your dream."
Mhm, mhm.
And
Wow.
so that's how we were being raised.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then he would follow that up saying, if you want to do music, you've got to go to where it's at. They're not going to be calling you. I grew up in East Tennessee, and he said, even though we're in the same state, in Nashville, they're not going to be calling you up here to come down. You've got to go down to Nashville and become a part of the fabric of the community, of the music community, and be entrenched in that. And so that's the advice that we were getting. Whereas all my other friends, it was go to school and you're going to get a job with the company and you'll be with them forever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's some dramatically different advice. And so how did that advice serve you, Chad? What did that lead to? What did you end up doing then, getting that kind of advice?
So while my dad was telling us that, my mom was saying, "You guys have got to go to college," you know. And so, yeah, my dad said, "Well, okay, yes, if you, so, why don't we go to college in Nashville?" And that's what I did. I went to Belmont University, which they
Okay.
have an incredible music business department, and so, because uh, music business, it is a business. It's
Yeah.
not just get together with your buddies and play and it's a done deal. There's so much in the business part. And once again, growing up, dad would help us with that in terms of, you know, um, doing contracts with people where we played and the financial aspect of that. So
Okay.
we were raised with that, but going to Belmont was just a phenomenal experience because not only was I learning the business of music, but then also I was networking with other friends, creating relationships within the university. performing, playing with, anybody and everybody in the studios and live and with songwriters and really just going all out performing with and learning and building these relationships. And one thing about the music industry is what I learned is that the whole generation comes up. So as we were getting out of school, we were getting in the business, and then all of us just kept moving up in the business. So now, when I walk into a meeting, I see guys I went to school with. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so many years. What's going on?
Wow.
Because
Wow.
we've all come up in the business
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
and those relationships. I mean, they run deep. I mean, I've been out of school for a couple of years, let's just
Uh-huh.
say.
You and
I
me
mean,
both.
yeah, a couple of decades here, but those relationships are really deep, and we've and it's so much easier to nurture those relationships that have already been established. And
Yeah.
so that's what I came to Nashville and went to school at Belmont, and then soon after Belmont is when I got my first gig, and that started the whole career.
Wow. And you were able to make your dad and your mom happy.
That's right, absolutely. And what was funny with Pin Monkey, my brother was actually in our band together, the one that was signed to RCA,
Okay.
and we performed on the Grand Ole Opry 47 times, I believe it was,
Wow.
and my parents were there for every single performance that we did there, and
That
so
is so
it was
awesome.
really fun to see them. And my dad. He never made it to the professional level of being in the music industry, so he's able to live that through us, and
Yeah.
and it was a really special moment in our
Yeah.
lives.
Wow. Wow. That is so awesome. I bet your dad is, I bet both your parents just incredibly proud of you and their other kids and stuff. Well, I know you wanted to talk about Dan too. I want to make sure we get you time to honor Dan too and stuff. And so we'll shift focus a little bit and like, how did you meet Dan?
That's a funny story. Uh, so I went and saw a seminar that Dan was putting on here in Nashville, and of course he was talking about 48 days to the work you love. So talking about um, creating work around the life that you want instead of the opposite, trying to
Yes.
find a job around the life that you have.
Yeah.
And so I was just so intrigued with him. And uh, after the seminar, I wanted to do one-on-one coaching with him. So I emailed his office and I said, "Hey, I would love to meet up with Dan." And I was told, they're like, "Well, he's not coaching one-on-one right now because he's writing books and he has a successful podcast and that he's got so much going on." And I was just like, oh my gosh, I really, I got to get to Dan. And on his podcast, he often talked about his grandkids and how he also loved anything that was creative in terms of relationships and how you introduce yourself to people and with for those relationships. And so knowing that he had grandkids, I went and bought a 3/4 size acoustic guitar, and I wrote on a note, Dan, I know you've heard every tune in the world, but you haven't heard my tune yet. Let's grab lunch. And
Right.
signed it, and then I had it couriered over to his house because we're in the same city.
Uh-huh.
I didn't
Uh-huh.
want to take it because that'd be the creepy level right there. No creepiness. So I had it couriered over to his house, and the next morning I had an email from him, and he's like, "Oh my gosh." He goes, that was like the best introduction I've ever seen. That was so creative.
That is
And he and
awesome.
we went and had Mexican, like a Mexican lunch, and we sat there for about 3 hours talking
Wow.
about everything. And I was talking to him about all my music and my career in music. And I was telling him, I'm like, I feel like there's something more. There's something more I need to do. Music has been great, and it's been like my dream, but I feel like there's something else in terms of me giving back. And he said, "Well, I think you should write a book, and I think you should write about all of your experiences and share that with people, so that it may help them." Because the music industry is one of the most elusive, like how'd you get in? How'd you get your gig? How do you even get a door open to get your foot in to do what you do? And so I thought, okay, that's an interesting idea. I was with Kenny Loggins at the time, and so I started I mimic everything of Dan Miller's. And so he has
Okay.
48 Days to the Work You Love, 48days.com. So I did 25 notes for the successful musician, 25notes.com. And so I had that as that was my starting point. And I wrote, it was basically in a journal sized book, because I knew that musicians, they travel all the time. And, it's a quick read. You can throw it in. And each of the 25 notes is, very short, quick read. So if you're on a plane ride, you can just read just a couple at a time if you need to.
Okay. Okay.
But I wrote 25 notes for the successful musician, and that was, I mean, that was in 2008, and from that opened up so many avenues for me in terms of speaking. My speaking career took off from that. Eventually, Belmont University reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we need an adjunct professor." And ended up, I was teaching two classes for
Wow.
them at
Wow.
Belmont, and then also creating this course. That this is an extension of basically writing, from writing the book. And so Dan was so much I mean, it was all him that was responsible for that. But he was just throughout my from I guess it was around 2007 is when we met, until he passed away a couple of years or last year. He was such a champion of mine, and so he would always just reach out and just say, "Man, keep going. You're doing great." And he goes, "I'm keeping an eye on everything you're doing." He goes, "It's
Yeah.
just keep moving," and just so encouraging. And anytime I needed advice, he was always all ears, and would just really help me, and just
Wow.
it really meant the world to me.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, um, what what's an example? I mean, because you've already shared about your dad, and I want to dig deeper into this with Dan and stuff because without your mom and dad's backing and just their support, which led you to go to Nashville, go to college there, and just and all that came from that, which is just following guidance from somebody you just really trusted, your parents and stuff, your dad, and not only did you get into that, but look at that, like you said, every single performance at the Grand Ole Opry they were there for and stuff,
Mhm.
just fully supportive of you. And I can just only imagine, like I said, I think of my own kids and how proud of my own I am of my own kids for their accomplishments, and I can just imagine how your parents felt. And what I want to, like, when it comes to Dan, what's an example of something there where an example of where you personally got to make this really big impact, and maybe even in the moment maybe it surprised you a little bit, but you also know that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with Dan and stuff. What's an example of something like that, Chad?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and for me, I believe it's probably with the speaking career,
Okay.
because I was thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? And Dan, he was known for putting on these amazing workshops that people would come in for 2 or 3 days, and he had a place called the Sanctuary on his property where all
Okay.
these people would come in from literally all over the world. And he called me and he said, you just wrote the book. I want you to come speak at my conference. I'm like, what?
Wow.
I'm like, are you sure you got the right number? you know,
You
he
should
goes, yeah. He
be.
goes, bring your guitar and come on, and you can play and talk about your book and talk about being in the music industry and all the things. And to me, that was a validation for me, where I've got someone like a Dan Miller saying, here you go, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, there was a gentleman sitting in the crowd that day, and he's a professional speaker. And so then he took me under his wing and kind of gave me the nuts and bolts of like the actual business of speaking.
Yeah.
And his name's Kent Julian. Shout out to Kent. And Kent's amazing. And so he helped me along with developing all the necessary things in terms of presenting yourself as a speaker.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
so literally the book and the speaking career started with the Dan Miller and with his support of me speaking.
Wow. So how many speaking engagements would you say you've done at this point?
Oh, I mean, I I
You don't
don't
even know.
know.
You've done so
I
many.
mean, yeah,
A
no, I mean,
lot.
and some of them are big and some of them are small, but
Yeah.
it's really cool. Speaking at Belmont all the time, I speak at a lot of universities, and that's
Okay.
one area that I'm really focused on right now is speaking more at universities because I feel like students they need to hear this because it not only on necessarily like a stage for them, but
Uh-huh.
just for the rest of their life. I believe that these skills are really impactful for them. And so I just spoke at Indiana University here recently, and so I've been speaking more to students,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just love it, and I love whenever I'm able to share these ideas and just see people light up and connect the dots and
Yeah.
seeing how that it can really help them in their life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Wow. Wow. Well, I'll tell you, um I want to thank you for taking the time to have this conversation today. And for anybody that's listening to this right now going, man, Kevin, I really like Chad. I love how Chad shows up and stuff. And maybe some of the stuff that you've shared has got them thinking like, man, I'd like to follow up with him more on some of this stuff. Maybe the course or just what have you. Any websites, any resources we can share with
Yeah,
folks?
absolutely. So for Be Performance Ready for the wait list, it's chadjeffers.com
Okay.
slash BPR, as in
Oh,
Be Performance Ready, but
okay.
BPR, then the letters. On Instagram, I'm at Chad Jeffers. My email is chad@chadjeffers.com. So
Okay.
yeah, reach out to me and and for anybody listening, and we'll continue the conversation.
For sure, for sure. Chad, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
I think it's great what you're doing here with this podcast. In preparation for us speaking here, I was listening back, and one of the people that you were speaking with was Vincent Puiglis, and I'm actually in his community. I'm in
Oh,
his
you
group,
are.
and
Oh,
yeah, I've
wow.
known Vincent
Small
for years,
world.
and so I'm like, this is so cool, and I just love what you're doing. This is so valuable, and relationships are absolutely the cornerstone of everything that I do. I mean, that's
Yes.
whether it's music or real estate or personal. It definitely it all starts with the relationships, and I love what you're doing here. This is great.
Well, I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for just taking your time to have this conversation today and just speak from your heart and share from your heart. And I am really excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thank you again, Chad. Really appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
You bet.